You know what's truly terrifying? It's not the footsteps you hear in the dark. It's the moment you realize the footsteps have stopped, because whatever was following you is already in the room with you. This story takes place during one of the coldest winters on record in northern Colorado. The kind of bitter cold where the forests look completely frozen in time, and the silence is so heavy that your own breathing sounds like an intrusion. A travel vlogger named Daniel Harper decided he would spend a night in a remote wooden cabin tucked deep inside the mountains. This cabin was old, very old. It was the kind of place people online wrote about with strange, cryptic warnings like "don't stay there after midnight." But Daniel didn't believe in any of that. He was the type of person who actively chased scary places for his content. Abandoned buildings, haunted hotels, desolate forest seed, been everywhere. So, when he heard the rumors about this cabin, he packed his camera, drove 6 long hours into the mountains, and arrived at the location just as the sun began to set. The cabin stood completely alone, surrounded by tall, imposing pine trees. A thick blanket of snow covered the roof, the porch, and the narrow path leading to the front door. There were no other houses, no lights in the distance, just miles and miles of endless, silent forest. Daniel smiled into his camera, his breath turning to mist in the cold air. Tonight, he announced to his viewers, "I'm staying in what they call the most haunted cabin in Colorado." He let out a little laugh after saying it, as if the whole idea was just a big joke. Inside, the cabin smelled of old wood and years of settled dust. The furniture looked like it hadn't been replaced in decades. There was a small, simple bed, a wooden table, and an old, tarnished mirror hanging on the wall across the room. Daniel set up his camera on a tripod and filmed a short intro for his video. After that, he cooked a quick meal, checked his phone, no signal, of course, and decided to try and get some sleep. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, creating long, hollow sounds that echoed through the quiet cabin. At around 2:13 a.m., Daniel woke up at first. He didn't know why. His eyes were heavy, and the room was pitch black. Then he heard it. Tap, tap, tap. A slow, gentle, rhythmic tapping sound. It sounded exactly like someone was knocking on the window. Daniel sat up straight in bed, his heart starting to beat a little faster. He stared toward the window on the other side of the room. A sliver of moonlight was shining through the glass, illuminating the snow-covered ground outside. He waited, holding his breath. Silence. He rubbed his face and muttered to himself, "It's probably just a tree branch." He lay back down, pulling the covers up to his chin. But just a few seconds later, tap, 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 the sound came again. This time it was louder, more deliberate. Daniel sighed in frustration, grabbed the flashlight from his bedside table, and walked over to the window. He slowly, cautiously, moved the curtain aside and peered outside. Nothing. There was absolutely nothing there. Just the pristine white snow and the tall trees swaying gently in the wind. He stood there for a moment, a strange, unexplainable chill running down his back that had nothing to do with the cold. Then he turned around, and he froze. On the wooden floor of the cabin, there were wet footprints. They started at the front door. Large, dark footprints made by something that had clearly stepped in the snow outside and then walked right inside. Daniel's eyes widened as he followed the trail. The footprints went across the floor, step by step, until they stopped right next to the bed where he had just been sleeping. His heart began to pound in his chest, a frantic drum against his ribs. He slowly turned his head to look at the door. It was still locked from the inside, exactly as he had left it. The tapping sound came again. But this time, it wasn't coming from the window. It was coming from behind him. Daniel turned his head slowly, his body stiff with fear. The old mirror on the wall was reflecting the entire room. And in the mirror, he saw something standing directly behind him. A tall, thin figure, a woman. Her hair was long and black, hanging over her face like a dark, heavy curtain. Daniel spun around instantly. There was nothing there. The room was empty. His breathing grew shallow and fast. His hands started to shake uncontrollably. He looked back at the mirror again, his eyes wide with disbelief. The woman was still there, standing right behind him in the reflection. But this time, she was closer. With trembling hands, Daniel grabbed his camera and turned it on. "If something's in here," he whispered into the lens, his voice cracking. "I'm going to catch it." He slowly raised the camera and pointed it at the spot behind him. Through the camera's small screen, the room looked completely empty. He turned around again, just to be sure. Still nothing. For a brief, hopeful moment, he thought maybe his mind was playing tricks on him, that the isolation and the stories had gotten to him. Then the camera screen flickered, and suddenly a pale face appeared on the display. Right behind him, the face of a woman. Her skin was an unnatural, ghostly white. Her eyes were completely black, like deep, empty pits, and her lips were stretched into a thin, disturbing smile. Daniel's entire body locked up with pure terror. He couldn't move, couldn't scream. He turned around slowly, dreading what he was about to see. This time, she was really there, standing in the middle of the room. Her feet were hovering a few inches above the floorboards. Her head tilted slowly to one side, as if she were studying a curious insect. Daniel stumbled backward, his back hitting the door. Who are you?" he managed to ask, his voice barely a whisper. The woman didn't answer. She just smiled wider. The lights in the cabin began to flicker on and off erratically. The room suddenly felt much, much colder. The kind of cold that seeps into your bones. Daniel grabbed the door handle, his hand fumbling with the lock, and tried to wrench it open. It wouldn't move. It felt like someone on the other side was holding it shut. Behind him, the woman began to move. Not walking, floating. Slowly, silently. She glided toward him. Her voice finally came out. A quiet, broken sound that seemed to come from all directions at once. "You weren't supposed to come here." The lamp on the table suddenly went out. Complete darkness swallowed the entire cabin. Daniel screamed. A few seconds later, the light flickered back on. The room was empty again. The woman was gone. Daniel didn't wait another second. He threw his weight against the door, forcing it open, and ran out into the freezing forest. Snow crunched loudly under his boots as he sprinted between the trees, not daring to look back. He didn't stop. He just kept running, desperate to put as much distance as possible between himself and that cabin. Not until he noticed something strange. There were footprints in the snow ahead of him. Fresh footprints. They were leading deeper into the forest, away from the cabin. But Daniel hadn't walked there yet. Slowly, with a dawning horror that made his stomach drop, he realized something. Those footprints weren't his. Daniel lifted his head, his eyes scanning the dark woods in front of him. And there, between two massive pine trees, the woman was standing there, watching him. And behind her, dozens of other shadowy figures slowly emerged from the darkness, all of them staring at him, all of them smiling that same horrifying smile. And together, their voices whispered on the cold night air. a chorus of ghostly sounds that seemed to surround him. Welcome to the cabin. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more chilling tales. See you next time.